Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of Prime Life. Laura, how are you?
I'm doing well today, Paul. It's exciting to be here with everyone and get a chance to have this conversation.
Yeah. Joseph, we're going to talk about what holds people back from change, right? What is it?
Yeah, I'm excited. Fear. I think we're going to talk a little bit about fear. I've done a bunch of reading on the subject, and I'm excited to hear what our guest has to say about it.
Yeah. Mary, tell us who we have, and please introduce our guest.
Yeah, speaking of guests, well, welcome Jacqueline Wales, keynote speaker, trusted advisor to highly accomplished women, corporate executives, and entrepreneurs, and the author of The Fearless Factor and The Fearless Factor at Work and When the Cow Sings. Jacqueline, your clients tell you that you deliver tough love with compassion and get results. Your tagline is, be fearless, see where it gets you. Tell us what inspired you to talk about fear.
I think we have to start way back at the very beginning of this extraordinary life that I've been blessed with so far. I discovered fear at a very, very early age because I grew up in a family that was alcoholic and violent. And you learn to run and hide very quickly when you're a little person from the wrath of someone who's out of control. So that's really where it started. And of course, what it created over the years was lack of confidence, low self-esteem. You know, a lot of the behaviors that you see in many, many people, depending on the backgrounds that they've had. And fear was a regular companion to my life. Of course, I've always been a risk taker in my life. I left home at 15 and then went off from Scotland, Edinburgh, Scotland, to London at the young age of 16 and had to figure out how to get a job and make all of that work. And then I proceeded to run into more trouble along the way. And so it went. So the background to fear is something that I've dealt with a lot throughout the first few decades of my life. And when I came into coaching, my coach said to me, you should talk to people about fear because you have gone through some extraordinary life experiences that were really all about pushing the envelope, testing yourself, and really coming out the other side. So that's why the being fearless piece is not the absence of fear, but it's the courage to take the next step. And that's what I like to talk about in terms of fear. Most people think fear is real. It's not. It's primarily imagination-based. It's the stories we tell ourselves. And it plays into our limiting beliefs. It plays into the behaviors that are part of those limited beliefs. And it plays into the fact that many of us don't live up to our potential. That's the short, sweet answer.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Yeah, and it's fear is fascinating. And there are different fears at different points in your life. You know, I'm raising two girls now, two women. You know, the fears they have in their 20s, or you kind of look back and say, oh, it's not. Don't worry. But I remember how big they were then. Now, fast forward, you know, later in life, wow, you've got a job, a career, you have a comfortable lifestyle, but you're not happy. You know, you see an end, you see you want to be doing something else. How does that fear stack up with some of the others? I mean, you must have sort of a classification of.
Well, you know, there's certain fears that we can, you know, say for sure are there. You know, the fear of loss, the fear of rejection, the fear of humiliation, the fear of failure, the fear of success. You know, there's a long list of things that we can say we fear. Primarily, fear is future focused. I'm afraid for what the future holds. I'm afraid that my kids might get into trouble or that something goes wrong in their life and I'm not there to protect them. I'm afraid that I won't be able to, get the promotions that I need in order to maintain the lifestyle that I have right now. I'm afraid that I might get fired. Well, there's a whole bunch of things that we can get into about the future forward thinking that, if it's not positive, can definitely lead you down a very fearful rabbit hole. But I also like to talk about fear matters to your success. And the reason for that is because it's a driver for growth. When we think about when fear shows up, that uncertainty, that sense of, dread in the stomach, the sweaty palms, whatever the case may be, the overthinking of things, the over worrying about things that have not actually happened yet, we have to kind of stop ourselves in the moment and say, so what's the worst that can happen? What is the worst that can happen? And I like to say the worst thing that can happen for a lot of people is they're going to die. Now, some of us are going to live long lives and some of us may not. Who knows? We have no calendars on this one. But, from the point of view of what is the worst thing that can happen, we can bounce back from almost anything, and except for physical harm, which could be difficult.
So I build on something Paul said. He's raising his girls, young adults. Does fear change as you age? And if you think about fear, it's an evolutionary adaptation, right? Because you lived on the savannah, you were afraid that some lion was going to eat you, right? And that's kind of evolved, and now we live in a different kind of a world. So does fear change as you age?
Well, I'm coming from the point of view of being in my 7th decade at this point in time. So I look at it as, I'm a lot more confident and a lot more clear about my fears than I've ever been at this point in time. So there is a maturity to it, because once you start to really spend time reflecting on where you get in your own way, because that's what fear is actually. It's just an obstacle. So when you understand how that fear is an obstacle in your life and what is causing that fear in terms of the way you think about it, the ways in which you react to things, then you can make a choice. You can make a choice to do something different with it. So, the impetus for growth with fear is like, I'm damned uncomfortable with this, so let's see what that's all about, and be willing to examine. Because it's kind of like having an ailment. If you don't examine it and you don't figure out what the symptoms are, you're never going to find a cure for it. So my approach on this is, let's examine your fears. Let's see if they're real. And I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, what we get from fear is the person's sense of, I'm not good enough. And that is critical to the fear equation right there. How many people think to themselves, oh, of course I'm good enough, but yet underneath it there's that uneasy sense of, maybe I'm not all I'm cracked up to be, or maybe people don't really like me, or maybe I've got to do more, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of reasons. But I think that I'm not good enough is really fundamental to a lot of fears.
Yeah. Earlier I said that I've been doing some reading on the subject myself. So I read fear is actually masking your desire for something else. And you kind of have to work through that to achieve your goal.
Yeah. And when you think about it from why fear matters to your success, that's exactly what it is. If it's masking the symptoms of insecurity. So let's say you want to swing for the fences and do something that's really big and bold. But, oh my God, can I pull that off? Am I capable? Will people support me? What will other people think? That's a big one when it comes to facing your fears. What will other people think? And I like to say what other people think is none of your business, simply because you can't get inside people's heads. So, very simple. But I like to break things down into very practical approaches to things. That's one thing I'm known for. I'm very much a common sense kind of woman, but it's all about how can we be practical about this stuff. And mostly it's going to come back to the fundamental, what stories are you telling yourself?
So is it safe to say that fear could change once either control or the illusion of control enters the conversation? So if someone says, well, I'm not sure I can do that because I am not good enough, if they've earned that sense of control over the situation and now they're feeling a little bit different about themselves, maybe they are going to be good enough. Does control change fear for us? And, is that helpful?
So here's what control is. It's a safety issue. When we feel like we're in control, we're safe. When we feel like we're out of control and things are chaotic, there's fear right there. When things are not lining up the way that you want it to. So we have to really, again, examine that piece about control. As a confirmed control freak who's in recovery mode, it was really all about keeping myself safe. If I knew where everything was at and I had control over that and I knew what to expect with regards to a certain thing, then that was fine. I was content with that. But when you don't know, that's when the control issues raises its head, because got to keep an iron grip on it. How many times have you said to yourself, "I'll do it myself because I'll do it better"? Every single one of us has fallen into that trap, which makes it hard to delegate stuff because you got to trust. And that's another piece about fear. Fear is about your inability to trust that you can handle whatever comes your way. And I'd love to take credit for that one, but that was Susan Jeffers who wrote many, many decades ago on Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And you may have come across that book. But that was her line. And when she endorsed my first book, The Fearless Factor, she said, just make sure you quote that one properly. I was like, okay. So here we are, decades later, we're still quoting Susan Jeffers. But it is a piece. It's about trust yourself and trust that you can handle whatever it is that comes your way. And that brings up the issue of resilience. How resilient are you? And because we've all had experiences in our life that really pushed us to the limits, and we came out of it on the other side, you have to remember that when you get into fear about, can I do this? Am I capable? Will I get the support I need? I mean, these are the fundamentals of where we go to when we're looking at our fears.
Jacqueline, go ahead, Paul. Jacqueline, what are some of the techniques that you use to kind of unfold that with others in terms of, trusting yourself? What do you offer in terms of advice that can lead individuals down a path of learning how to trust themselves if they do not, and many of us don't, I think, as you indicated.
Yeah,
or not fully.
Is there a process or a series of steps? Do you have
it's always about questions. Yeah, it's always going to be about questions, asking questions of yourself. And as a coach, what I will do is a client comes to me with a problem. I don't feel like I'm communicating effectively with my team members. Okay. So what do you think is getting in the way? Well, are you good at listening? Are you asking the right kind of questions? Are you feeling like you have the confidence to be able to address a difficult conversation? Do you lead with negativity, or can you find a way to bring in positivity and appreciation? Do you trust yourself to know that you have the skills necessary? And if you don't, then let's help you get those skills in mind. So, give me an example, one of you, from, any fear that you might have. Let's look at that for a second, because this is the real world way of dealing with it. So are you going to be willing to give me a piece that you're dealing with right now about insecurity? Yes, Paul.
Sure. Yeah, I can't work forever. Okay, but it's I've got kids, I've got bills, I have a house, I have taxes. At what point? How long will my career last? And what do I do from that point on? I'm used to showing up with a title, and getting a nice paycheck. What do I do next?
So your identity is tied up with who you are and what you're doing now. That's very clear.
Correct.
And the horizon looks a little blurry at this moment, because you will be put into a position eventually where your identity of the role that you're fulfilling right now, the ways in which you're living your life, may be challenged. However, You're now in an opportunistic state in order to be able to define what really drives me. What is my passions? What is it that really would give me a sense of purpose in life beyond what I'm currently doing? Because your whole life is not just about your job and the benefits of that job. Your whole life is about, where's the pleasure in it? Where's the piece where you can feel like you contribute to the world in general? You contribute to your family for sure, but they're becoming adults, and so I've got 4 adults in my life. They get on with their own lives, and you see them whenever they feel it's 5 minutes that they can spare you, frankly. But the point being is that for you're in a period of time where you can really think down the road to redefine who you wish to be, and the key word there is to be, not to what you do. Because we're all doers, but learning how to be is a very different journey. And be comfortable with yourself and be happy about choices you're making. But you might not know what these choices are right now.
So you mentioned steps. What are the first couple steps I should be taking?
The first steps that I would give you is sit down and write a list of all the things that you consider to be your strengths. Then write a list of all the things that you consider to be your weaknesses. And then look at those strengths and say, what amongst this is being driven by my passion? And look at the pieces that are exciting you. What is it you love? You love to connect with people. You love to have conversations. You're in marketing, so you love ideas. You love to be able to share those ideas. There's a whole wealth of people out there who need content creation, or they need to be able to figure out how their marketing processes work better. Hell knows, you could go into being a consultant if you wanted to. We get to a certain point where we go like, well, we're 65 years old, so we're supposed to retire and do whatever. Hell no, your life is just beginning. There's a whole lot more in front of you. And yeah, you're on the short end of the stick, let's face it. That's how I look at it. But how do we make every single day count? That becomes the gift that we give ourselves. I might have gone a little bit off topic here, but that's the start of the process for you. And then we'd want to look at your belief systems about who you think you are. And that then becomes another exercise of exploration and examination. Most people think they know who they are. I am absolutely guarantee you most people do not know who they are because they've never taken the time to fully explore all the dimensions. Most of us don't live up to our potential because we play too small.
You're so right.
When we live into that big potential? That big sense
playing
too small, exactly.
Yeah, playing too small is probably connected directly to the fear, right? Fear of failure, fear of looking silly, stupid. Use the word you want, right? Probably all connected.
Yeah, and I got accused of that for years. People would say to me, "Why are you playing so small? You've got a really big personality," and I would go, well, I'm not really. No, I mean, I'm doing this, that, and the next thing. But the truth of the matter was I wasn't really swinging for the fences. And it took me a while to finally get up the courage to be able to say, yeah. I mean, when I came into this job, I'll be honest with you, 17 years ago, I had no clue about nothing. It's like somebody suggested after years of writing books, making music, traveling the globe, raising my family, it was about, well, you could become a coach. And I was like, how do I do that? She said, you've been giving people advice your whole life. Now you can get paid for it. I said, wow, I can get paid for it? Great, I'll do that. That sounds like fun. But at the same time, there was an awful lot of learning along the way in order to do that. So I've redefined and redesigned my life, reinvented my life many times over, many, many times over. And each time it came with a lot of fear. Can I do this? Am I capable? Try standing up in front of an audience where you're singing and your throat's kind of jammed up in the first few notes until you relax and let it go.
Yeah, how much fear, Jacqueline, do you think is environmental, how much of it's inherited? You know, I've seen these studies where these little chickens have never seen a hawk, and the hawk, you know, if the shadow of a hawk comes across and they scatter. They know it's a hawk. You know, humans, it's interesting. Like, you know, my grandmother had my mom late in life. My mom had me late in life. You know, my wife's parents younger. Okay, I'm actually like a child of the Depression. You know, where we were saving everything. You know, and how much you think is financial stress, familial stress can get passed on into.
Definitely. I mean, you know, you have to break the chains of the intergenerational trauma. And I, again, know this one really, really well, because in one generation, I've created a family that is loving, that is somewhat healthy, because we've all got our dysfunctions, no matter how well we're raised. But, you know, I look at it in terms of where I came from and what my current family is all about. It's a whole different ballgame. And to your point, it is environmental. For instance, take negative thinking. Many times we're harsh judges of ourselves. The critical voice inside is calls you all kinds of names, you know, leads you into places where you're full of judgment and criticism. And then you have to ask yourself, whose voice is that speaking? Because I'll guarantee you a lot of the time that voice did not originate in your head. It came from somebody else's mouth. And it landed in your head with a thud, and it stayed there. And I think we always have to question our negative thinking. Who's doing the talking? Because as I say, I'm pretty sure from all the experiences I've had, you didn't put that there for yourself. Somebody else gave you the idea, and you thought, oh yeah, that's exactly who I am. I'm stupid. I'm not smart enough. I'm not. Not true.
What are your suggestions for overcoming that voice in your head?
You've got to challenge it every time. I mean, it's not going to go away just because you go, oh. But what you do is you catch yourself in the act, and then you say, okay, I hear that. I choose to go a different direction, and then supplant it with a positive aspect. Because for every negative, there's a positive. Transform it. I don't have enough information yet. As opposed to I'm stupid. I don't have enough information yet to make a judgment. You know, somebody saying you can't do this. Again, maybe I'm not ready for it yet. And there's that magic little word called yet. Now, up until now, I haven't been able to do that. And that's, reframing and rephrasing, which is a very big part of the change process. So you have to catch yourself in it. But it's time consuming. And you also have to learn self-compassion. There's another one right there. We have to be kind to ourselves. Most of us are not very kind to ourselves. We know the expression, you're your own worst enemy. And I like to say, learn how to become your own best friend, because the way you talk to yourself, you wouldn't talk to your best friend that way.
So we mentioned people around us and how that can affect either the messages we receive and how we feel. How important is it to have a surrounding group of individuals as you're going through that transformation journey that can help bring you back up and show you your greatest potential?
Look for all the negative folks in your life. The ones who are the naysayers, the ones who are full of complaints and criticism, and either get rid of them or minimize your time with them. And then look for the folks who really are on your side, who are championing you, who are supporting you, who are encouraged by you, maybe even inspired by you. These are the folks you want to be hanging out with on a regular basis. Now, sometimes our family members, it's hard to get rid of them. They're a pain in the ass, but there's nothing we can do about them. They're there. But you can minimize the amount of time you want to spend with them. So, it's like, I don't have all afternoon for you. Maybe I've only got half an hour. That's what you get, And don't take it on, because people want to give you their garbage. They want to just load it on you. And a lot of us are like, oh, yeah, just bring it on. No, don't bring it on. I got my guard all shield up. I am not interested. Walk away. Yeah. So that's how you do it.
It's true. People...
Yeah.
It's true. People love to dump their problems on you.
Yes.
It's always the negative stuff they dump it on you, and then you're feeling bad after that.
Right. So setting boundaries for yourself is critical. You have to know what you're prepared to take on, what you're not prepared to take on, and get really clear about that. And it's not about whether you like me or not, by the way. A lot of people allow themselves to get into that sinkhole because they just want to be liked. And there's too many people go through life wanting to please other people and wanting to be liked. And I meet it all the time in my work. So, you have got to be able to set some really clear boundaries. And when you can say to yourself, does this work for my highest and best purpose? And the answer is no, steer clear. All right.
You mentioned something earlier.
Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned something earlier, which you said courage is a decision. And I wrote this down a while back. I'm pretty sure Winston Churchill is who said this, that fear is a reaction, courage is a decision.
Yes.
And you were talking about that just a few minutes ago, so
yeah,
it's inappropriate. I wrote it down because it's pretty powerful just to think about it.
Courage is a decision. And then that's when I say, fear shows up. Your decision is to move beyond it. But here's the other side about fear. You have to ask the question, do I have empirical evidence that fear is real? 9 times out of 10, it's a thought. It's not tangible. You can't touch it. Now, if somebody's standing in front of you with a gun, that's a whole other issue. But, and to your point that you made earlier, Paul, about, the primitive stuff, and Joseph said the same thing, it's the amygdala, and it's that primitive brain that kicks in whenever we feel threatened, whenever we feel like we're out of control or there's situations that we don't know how to handle. That's when the fear shows up, So again, it's an emotion, and like all emotions, it's transitory. So you have to be able to give yourself the moment to just, evaluate what's really going on. Do I have evidence that this is real? Answer's no, then move along. Move along. It's a waste of energy. Yeah. But it takes years to get there for some people, including me, because I didn't come to this overnight. This has definitely been decades in the making. But it is an understanding that I know to be true at this point. Yeah.
Do you think it's harder or easier to let go of fear the more you're mature? It sounds like you would argue it's easier later in life.
I think you set your priorities differently as you mature. A 20-year-old or a 30-year-old might be struggling with their self-identity. By the time you get to a certain age, you kind of know who you are. You can always learn more about who you are. And frankly, we're always in growth mode, even to the point where we're in the pine box going out the door. So, that's really the way I look at it. So I would tend to feel, and I do feel, that as you get older, you get more comfortable with yourself. And if you're not more comfortable with yourself, you've got a lot of work to do. That's pretty much where it stands. But I think, we're always in growth mode, no matter where we're at. When I think back to my 20s and all the things I did back then, I had a lot of trouble with drugs and alcohol for quite a long time. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-30s when I got my wake-up call, and I decided that I needed to change my life. And that was really when it started. So, I've had half a lifetime to perfect who I am and what I'm all about.
Jacqueline, can you give Jacqueline, can you give us some, a few tips or takeaways that, individuals can really, take in and potentially take action on that can kind of get them going? Those, I was hearing it's almost like we're also replacing some of what we think and how we think and words we use to describe situations. So it would be great to hear, just some common sense, tips that you would offer.
Yeah. So we start, number one, with what are the stories you're telling yourself, and how can we change the narrative? And changing the narrative is really about in some ways it's affirmations about, I am good enough, I am strong enough, I am capable. These are the messages that we can feed ourselves, especially when the negative thinking shows up. And when the negative thinking shows up, you feel your inner critic being judgmental, you're finding yourself spiraling into being less than you actually want to be. Then you have to again question that and say, okay, how can I change that up? So that then becomes, what's the opposite of that? So if you did something wrong and you call yourself stupid, what's the opposite of that? I did something wrong and I need to take a different action next time. Let's talk about fear of failure, for instance. Now, that's a big one for a lot of people. I like to say we're all failing our way to success. And what does that mean? It means that when I fail, it's simply a choice, an expectation, or a decision that did not go the way that I had wanted. You can see that all of this is about resetting mindset. All of it is about how do you think differently. So the takeaways on this is be mindful of your internal dialogue. Be mindful of the people that you're hanging out with who may be pulling on your energy and not supporting it. And be mindful of making choices for yourself that really are about you and not about what someone else wants or desires, which is another piece of that. So these are really the fundamental takeaways. And when it comes to fear, as I said earlier, ask yourself, do you have empirical evidence? If you don't, you just made shit up. And that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Now we have to put explicit on this podcast.
I was thinking that would be the quote that we could actually use.
It's an adult podcast. Hey, Jacqueline, this was Jacqueline. This was great. I don't know, Mary. Last thoughts, questions.
I mean, I'm curious. Is there a difference in gender when you coach people? Have you noticed men versus women, or others, like in terms of the type of fear? Just curious.
For women particularly, there is an issue of speaking up, of making decisions, of taking risks. I work with a lot of highly accomplished women, and what I come across all the time is that they've achieved a certain amount in their lifetime, but they're not making all the moves necessary, so they have to think about how are they taking ownership and authority of their roles, and that's a big piece. In terms of gender, I've worked with males who are mostly at managerial level or senior managerial level, and for them, it's again, the confidence issue is there, and I feel that, you get a lot of males who are very competitive, and a lot of that competitiveness is about needing to prove oneself. And if the needing to prove oneself is in the mix, that again is fear-based as far as I can tell. So I'm always looking at behaviors to see what's really operational. But for women specifically, I want to see more women rise up and take authority in their roles. And a lot of that's got to do with having an opinion and making sure that you insert yourself into conversations instead of allowing others to run it for you.
Thank you.
Joseph.
Thank you.
So I think, it's an interesting conversation, as mentioned. I've been studying a little bit about fear myself, so the takeaway for me is we can control our feelings of fear, and whether that's keeping people away from us or rephrasing what we're thinking or just questioning our own inner voice. So that's very helpful, and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%.
Laura.
We heard a little bit about your story and your early parts of your life earlier in the podcast, but what is your why? What is something that gets you going every single morning and you're back at it? What drives you?
I believe passionately in change, and I see too many people struggling and suffering because they're not willing to change. And my reason for getting out of bed in the morning is if I can give even 5 cents worth of good information to help people think differently, then I'm changing the world one person at a time. And that was my mission when I started doing this job. Change the world one person at a time, because it's a domino effect. And if you help one person be a better version of themselves, they'll help somebody else. So that's really my life.
A lot of us, as you know, wake up in the cage we built ourselves.
Yes.
And sometimes need a little help climbing out of it. So this was wonderful. So you speak, you've written books, you do consulting. What's the best way for people to sort of tap into your knowledge and expertise and advice?
So my website is JacquelineWales.com. And I created this year something called Transformational Strategies for Success. It's an online self-directed program supported by coaching and advisory board masterminds. And this is taking a great deal of in fact, all of my content that was created over 12 years ago, and we've digitalized it into a very deeply self-reflective program that is designed to get people to hold the mirror up to who they are, where they want to go, and most importantly, what is getting in the way, and helping them to analyze that. So that's my signature program now, and I am really looking forward to bringing that out into the world in a bigger way.
Well, excellent. We'll put links in the show notes for anyone who wants to find out. We want to thank Mary, Laura, Joseph. Thanks so much for getting together this afternoon. I want to thank our listeners. Give us feedback. Tell us what you think, and look forward to joining us on the next episode of Prime Life. Thanks.
Have a great day, everyone.